Hey everybody, you probably can't hear the freaking race cars going out on the freeway on my door, but welcome everybody. This is my review for the Umbrella Academy Season 2. There, of course, will be spoilers in the second half of this review, but for anyone who hasn't already shot through the entire season over this weekend, it was really good. And I will do my best. Well, there's not much to spoil, admittedly, as far as like splitting it up. All this stuff I want to talk about without spoilers, I can easily do, and then the spoilers, I'll let you guys know. So getting right into it. Season 2 is better than Season 1. I like Season 1. I thought it was really entertaining, and I actually was looking forward to Season 2 for sure. But Season 2 was just better to me. Like, it felt more fast-paced for one. But the main thing, I think, is that it just felt more fun. It just felt like more lighthearted, because the whole point of the first season was this big mystery of, like, who killed dad. So it still had, like, the whole point of it, and not that this season isn't serious as well. Like, it's always something with the apocalypse, so it's all serious, but it was a lot darker. It was like, okay, someone killed dad. They were still getting into, coming back together as a family. So, like, admittedly, like, the whole first season is far more serious because everyone's coming back together for the first time in who knows how long. Nobody talks to anybody. Everybody always hated dad anyway, but they were kind of forced back together. So it was kind of like a lot of, it was the first season of a show. Like any series, the characters have to build up. It was still definitely entertaining, but it was definitely a much darker story because the characters were still definitely hurt. And I think in this season, they've already gotten past that, even though technically seasons 1 and 2 were, it's literally like season 1 ends and then season 2 begins. Like it starts up right where the last season left off. But because they've already gone through that stuff, and there's a bit of a time skip as they kind of go throughout the season, like, we pass a decent amount of time. I like how the characters were handled because they already kind of dealt with that, like that big chunk of like, I think they even reference it in like somewhere in this actual season. They mentioned like it's only been like 14 days or something like that. So those 14 days were pretty big for them in season 1. So it changes their characters and everything's just more lighthearted. Like they've kind of dealt with a lot of the trauma that they had repressed for over a decade in that first season. They came back together and they dealt with all that stuff. So in season 2, they're able to be a bit more lighthearted, even though things are still insane. It's just definitely, it feels more fun, like all around. It's not as somber of a tone overall. It's definitely just the tone itself. It just feels more lighthearted. So I enjoyed that because I was like, okay, it makes it feel more entertaining. It makes it where the characters get along, whether they get along or not, it's still a bit funnier, which is like, you can tell even in the first season, that was kind of the heart of the entire series, was that it's still funny and just silly, and it's an eccentric, eclectic, not eccentric, eclectic cast of characters, coming together because they're all left up in the head because of their insane dad, and they've all got superpowers, and then it's just like a bunch of mental trauma and stuff. And so like they've kind of worked through that stuff a little bit, like just enough in this, and some of that I'll get into with spoilers. I can't really talk about how they do some of that, but I'll reference that, of course, in the second half. But all in all, it was funnier. I think the action may have actually been better in this one too. I think the action was good in the first season as well, but I think they did. There were just like a couple of scenes where it was like, okay, this was just like a really cool scene, or like just something that they randomly showed. I was like, well, that was super cool, and it's something we didn't get from season 1. So I like what they did there. They made quite a few callbacks to the first season. They have all sort. I just watched like 2 videos where they talk about all the little things you miss, and of course I will reference that stuff in spoilers. But there's a very, very specific thing that you can find pretty much throughout the entire season. So that's all I'll say. So maybe you'll be able to find it, maybe you won't. But just watching it, it's not something that really pops up unless you happen to notice it more than one time. But it's definitely in there. So that was pretty cool, and be like, oh, didn't notice that at all, even though it was in quite a few scenes. It's like, it's in there a lot, and that's all I'll say, just so you have like your own little Easter egg hunt while you watch it. But highly recommend it. I thought, if you like season 1, I think you'll like season 2 better. Even if you didn't like, even if you kind of were just like, oh, I kind of thought it was okay, I think you would like straight up enjoy season 2. I think the fact that it is just pretty much lighthearted all the way through just makes it carry over a lot better, because it already has that silly dynamic. Like pretty much everything that they do with, like the crazier stuff with Five and Klaus, and just like how they're silly, or Five's case, maybe a bit of a douchebag a little bit, but it's always like the silly entertaining stuff. I feel like that's the whole season for season 2, where it's just like, because they got past the mystery of like, who killed dad, and them getting over the issues that they had repressed for so long. Now they're all like much more lighthearted. They're better, well-adjusted people. So things aren't as somber. It's like, they're still trying to figure out some crazy stuff. Once again, the apocalypse. So they're still trying to deal with some dark stuff, but they've become, better people. So I like that idea. Like, just the way it plays out, it's definitely paced a lot faster. Like, they kind of, you can kind of see it if you compare like season 1 to season 2, with them basically, the overall thing is still the apocalypse. So with them going from season 1 to season 2, you can see a very clear contrast in like how they've grown and developed as human beings, where it's like, in this first season, they were still like their stereotypes from, back when they were all kids. And in season 2, they're not those stereotypes anymore. They still are, but you can tell that they've like grown as people because of that crazy stuff that they went through, just in season 1. So I like that. Like, you can definitely tell that clear difference where it's like, okay, they're still there, but the people that need to warm up are warming up. The people that need to get a bit more serious might be getting a bit more serious and stuff like that. So I like the way it was definitely handled. So that I thought was really good. And overall, it's still acted very well. Everybody's in there. The new characters that come in are definitely pretty cool. They do some crazy stuff story-wise. And then, going into season 3, I'm excited to see how that's going to end up playing out. But all in all, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I think it was great. That's pretty much all I can say without getting into like all the epic stuff that's just you have to talk about when reviewing this season. So that is officially it for the non-spoiler segment. So I have my list, my official list of spoilers right here. So full-on spoilers from this point on. Starting with number 1, it shows up in the first episode. Some of our characters have some upgraded abilities, because one thing that I legit never noticed was the fact that Diego had actual superpowers. No joke, I thought he had like, it was more like agility. He had like super agility, like the way he would throw knives. I was like, okay, it's like unrealistic. I didn't know his actual power, and I just forgot this. Like, even in the actual season though, in season 1, I didn't realize that this was his actual power. But it's either vector manipulation or like velocity manipulation. I think it's vector manipulation. He actually can move things that are already moving. I did not know that. I thought his thing was that he threw knives, and it was just the fact that he had like some super ability to do specifically that. Like, he could throw an object at an impossible way. Like, that's why I thought his thing was like almost enhanced like agility or perception, stuff like that. Like, he could tell, like, if I do this very specific thing, I could do stuff that technically anyone's capable of, but no one, like, no one's brain actually operates enough to be like, hey, if you flick like this, it'll, spin around. That's what I thought he was doing the entire first season. I thought he was throwing stuff. And then the first episode, when Five gets to the future and he sees them like all teamed up, he literally spins as the bullets shoot at him, and all the bullets like warp back. And I was like, could he always do that? Was that what he's been doing this whole time? So apparently that's what he's been doing. I feel like this whole season they showed his powers way better than they did in the first season, because I legitimately thought the entire time that he was just like, his power was more that he could throw the knives in a specific way. He just used knives because they were lethal weapons when he was fighting somebody. I didn't realize he was literally like throwing them, and he was basically like moving them in midair. I didn't know that was his power. Like, I no freaking clue. So that was probably on me. But no joke, I felt like they showed it way better in this one. So I was like, okay, I guess that's what he was doing. It's not really an upgrade, but the way they showed it was definitely an upgrade, especially at the very end where he pulled off like the full-on, Matrix Reloaded mode where it was a bunch of bullets, and then he shot them off to the side. And I thought that was pretty cool, because it shows like he still has to push them somewhere else. Like, he can't just stop the bullets and, dead stop. And maybe we'll see that, as the series goes on. Eventually he gets so much control that he can literally just stop things instead of having to redirect the momentum. But I thought that was super cool, when we get to the end of that, and it was like he just stops everything and then he pushes them off to the side. So I was like, okay, that's super cool. Didn't realize that at all. The other thing was Allison in the beginning, where she was like, I heard a rumor that I blew your minds. That we didn't see, so that technically may not be a new power, and I heard that that's also a reference to something she does in the comic. I won't say what, in case you guys end up picking it up, but that's a reference to something that happens in the comics as well. And I was like, okay. In the first season, it was always she tells people something, and it's specifically something that they do, but that was very, very different compared to like, oh, I heard you did this, or I heard you did that. That was like, I'm saying something, and your head's exploded. It was like, like, I thought that was pretty cool. And it wasn't exact. It wasn't like, I heard your heads exploded. I heard a rumor your heads blew up. It was like, I heard a rumor I blew your minds. It wasn't even like exactly direct. It was like, it was a connotation thing. Like, she knew what she meant, and that's why their heads exploded. And I was like, huh. Well, that's something they didn't show off in the first season either, so that was cool. And Ben had a straight up upgrade, because he was able to actually like summon other ghosts, like at the end of the season when he was falling and the other ghosts caught him. So he had like a legit upgrade to where he was able to actually pull that off without. It was still kind of iffy, because even the way he was saying it in that finale where he was finally like, please, he was basically like, begging and hoping that it would work. So he's still not 100% there, but it works a lot better than it used to. So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Or not Ben, that was Klaus. But Ben also gets an upgrade. Klaus is doing all that stuff where he can summon ghosts. But Ben does also get an upgrade where he actually finds out that he can straight up, possess people, which I would assume any spirit could do. Who knows if that's like an automatic thing, or maybe they have to be there, over a certain amount of time. And he was also in a very different position compared to like any other spirit, because technically he never like went into the light, which they talk about towards the end. So that could be different as well. But that I thought was interesting. I was like, okay, they did the spirit possession thing, and then of course he sacrifices himself by the end, which I thought was very interesting. But he'll be back in the next season. Maybe they'll finally tell us what the F happened, because I thought for sure when he gave himself up at the end of this season, and then they did the flashback of him dying, I thought they were going to be like, oh, so it's going to be like, them talking about, when he died the first time, and they're going to explain exactly what finally happened, and then it would be, the whole family together, like, oh, he's gone. But it was just the flashback of Klaus, bringing him in the first time, and I was like, I thought we were finally getting it, and I was like, oh, they're finally going to do it. So I was a little upset by that, because I was like, oh, we finally got it, because that was the whole big thing in the first season. I was like, man, how did he die? I'm very curious. And he has like the crazy tentacle power and stuff. So it was very interesting. Maybe we'll see it in the next season. Maybe that'll be how they turn this new version of Ben, against, his old family, I guess, and then, in a sense, old/new. So we'll see how that plays out. Maybe season 3 we'll finally get our answer, but who knows. But my other little thing that I have, of course, Harlan being our new character who gets superpowers by the end. He ends up getting Vanya's telekinetic abilities. He doesn't have like all of her seismic stuff. She's able to take that back. But because she brought him back to life, he does end up inheriting some of her abilities. And so she takes out, I'd say, more the more dangerous component of it all. And so now he still has like the psychic abilities and the sparrow thing, which that's what was throughout the whole season. Like there's sparrows apparently all over the effing place that you can find. And they reference the fact that when we get to the end, we're going to run into the Sparrow Academy. So I thought that was cool. So, of course, with Harlan, playing with the Sparrow the whole time, it definitely makes sense that he would at least be a part of that in some way, shape, or form. Like, he would know, like, all right, they're from the future. I have these abilities. Eventually the whole thing with Hargreaves and him probably, going around to look for very specific children is like, okay, I know how this ends up playing out, stuff like that. Or he'll at least have a concept of it, like, all right, I have superpowers. I know that these specific people have superpowers. He might even be the reason that the team is different because he specifically knew all those characters except for Ben. So he was probably like, leave all of them alone because he cared about them. So it's like, I don't want them to grow up and have to deal with the life that they dealt with. So if we change who ends up becoming a part of the team, it'll change everything. Like, they won't have to have those very dark lives. They can stay with their families and stuff like that. So it could be nice. It could be that sort of way, or it could be a darker path. Who knows? He's definitely had an evil kid look at the end where he was looking at his mom. I was like, I thought he was just going to have superpowers and it would be like, oh, that's going to lead to something. And then he looked at his mom and it was like the murderous child look. And I was like, oh, well, that seems a bit ominous. It doesn't seem like that's going to lead into like, cool, a superhero. It seemed like more of a super villain sort of look. So who knows? We'll see what happens in season 3. But he's got powers, so we'll see how he plays into the whole Sparrow thing. I've seen videos where people say like maybe he's the parent of one of the new Sparrow children and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see for sure. So him possibly doing his own thing, because he could end up being a villain if he decides to stay out on his own, or he could end up being one of the good guys. I would assume either way, I feel like we're gonna end up seeing him like the older version of his character now that they've jumped back in time. So that'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out, no matter what, whether he's good or bad. It'll be interesting to see how he ended up going that path, whether or not he even interacted with Hargreaves, which I feel like he would have to. But also Hargreaves picking different kids could also just be the fact that he ran into all of them and was just like, okay, well, I don't want these kids, because he was pissed off with them as soon as he met them. Was like, okay, you all have issues and stuff. And obviously he doesn't blame himself for it because he doesn't really know, and he didn't really blame himself even when he was the one screwing everybody up. It was just like, you guys did this. Like, he gave the whole speech at Ben's memorial, and then it was like, but you guys pretty much suck. And then it was just like, wow, what a dick. So he wouldn't have cared, but it was probably just like, well, they grew up weak. F that. I'm just get some different kids. But he didn't know, he didn't know about Ben, so he still ends up getting Ben. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see whether he's good, whether he's bad. He does reference the fact that he figured that they would return. So he does remember them at the very least, which makes sense because he's seemingly immortal. He's an alien, which I totally forgot about. No joke. Because obviously I forget once you have the first season and it's been like a year, you forget all that crap. I forgot about that whole flashback scene until I saw him like kill those people. I was like, holy crap, he's an alien? And then I like flashed back and I was like, oh, I remember that scene because he was talking to some woman and there were like a bunch of lights leaving the planet. And I was like, oh no, that was in the first season. He was already an alien. I knew that. I just forgot because it's been like a year. So when that happened, it just like blew my mind. And then I was like, oh, okay, no, they already told us that. It's still different that he has like a crazy alien head. Made me think of Mass Effect. He reminds me of the Green Thane, I think is his name, from Mass Effect 2 and 3. Had, kind of like a lizard type of head. He had like a little bit of spikes and stuff. But he reminded me of that. I was like, oh, that's what he makes me think of, just from the back of the head. But yeah, he rips all those people apart. And I was like, okay, that's something for sure. But a lot of good stuff in this. Allison had a really cool storyline, her and her husband, and having to deal with like not using her rumor abilities, and then having to talk to him. And obviously he has a crazy bit of time where it's like, oh, she has a white brother, and then she has a giant white brother. So a lot of weird stuff was going on in his life. Then they had the Swedes coming in and trying to kill them and stuff. Crazy time. So I liked everybody's storylines, but hers I thought was really unique because then it kind of goes into of course, their technical relationship. I thought that was a great line. I was like, technically, if you have to start with technically, you're already messed up. So I thought that was a really good line in the show. But I like the way they handled that. Like everyone, like I mentioned, as far as their growth as characters, I like that they all ended up in different times because everyone, because everybody showed up at different years, they all just assumed that everybody else was gone. Like they were just in different times. So it was just like everyone decided to just go on with the normal life. And of course, Vanya ends up with amnesia. But everyone else was just like, okay, well, just normal life. I guess it's just me, so I have to just, adjust. And that was kind of what everybody did. They all actually got to have generic normal lives, and then they realized like, oh, we can find a way home, and we still have to save the world from an apocalypse, which was Vanya again. They did call that really early on, and technically they were definitely right. So it was kind of funny because it was like, well, it's probably her, and then it ended up actually being her, and I was like, dang, that sucks. That sucks for her, where she's always the bad guy at the end, but it's just how it is. So it'd be cool to see how that plays out, in season 3 now that she doesn't have the memory loss, because that was what actually triggered it this time. So now she's, got her powers and stuff like that. She, remembered her family and everything. So I thought that was really cool. But I really enjoyed it. And of course, one of my notes for sure, new character Lila, definitely entertaining. I liked her character. She was already funny from the beginning. And then as things went on, it got weirder and weirder because I'm like, okay, she's working for the enemy. That was shown off pretty early. And then they showed that she had powers. And I knew something was up. Because when she was with Five, she was on the roof. And then she went across the alley. And I was like, that don't work. Like, that don't work like that. And I knew something was up. I didn't think that she stole his power. But I figured, I just thought super speed, admittedly. And I was like, okay, she's got some sort of ability for sure. Because he'll go around a corner, or, he sees her on the rooftop, and then it's like, oh, there she is around the corner of this giant building that she had to go all the way down the stairs for, and then go around the corner, and it was just like, boom, it was instant, and it was like, well, that was pretty quick. And they even showed it in Five's face, like, that wasn't right. And when they're, they actually go to the factory, and it's like, what the heck is happening here? So that explained it. It was her using his power. So I thought that was cool, because they definitely put that hint in there. I was like, I know something's up. But they only showed it like that one time, really, so I wasn't sure like if it was, I just thought she had her own power. I didn't think she was mimicking his. But I thought that was cool. She was a good character. She finds out that the handler was basically like her Hargreaves, and I thought that was definitely cool. It was pretty much the same thing. And they say like, he was, it's pretty much the same, except he didn't kill our parents. Like, she killed yours and lied to you. So that was definitely something. I like that for sure. Five skills the board of directors. The dude, I forgot his name, but the fish guy, he ends up being eaten by the handler because his little attempt failed. Like, he was trying to say like, hey, look who put in, the kill order, but it was actually just like, hey, Five killed my parents. And it was like, oh, okay, well, that didn't really go how I planned. And then he was eaten, and so, game over for him. That sucks. But I like the way it was handled. She ends up getting killed off by the final Swede because he realizes that the gold was fake. And so it was like, holy crap, she was setting us up to kill these people, and that wasn't even an actual commission job. And my brothers died because of that. And, and I kind of like that element, because it was like, he could have still been mad at Allison, but it was like, we came to kill her, and it wasn't even an actual mission. Like, we were set up to kill her, and it was just he kind of looked at it and it was just like, it sucks, but it was fair. And 5 was just like, like enough, and it was just like, you could tell like he looked at her, but it was just like, I got to be fair about it. Like, she wouldn't have done that if we didn't go after her, and we went after her because it was a trap, or it was a setup. So I thought that was well done. Like, everything that they did, they just got used, and then it was just like, okay, I can just back out of this and not die. I just have to, cut my losses, which unfortunately includes losing both his brothers. And, that was just pretty much it. So I like the way that was handled. It was pretty funny. And who knows, maybe he'll show up. Like, he ends up joining Klaus's weird little cult, there. So I was like, okay, we'll see what happens with that. It could lead to something. It might not lead to anything, but we'll have to wait till season 3. But I like what we got. Let's see what else I put in here. Yeah, Hargreaves takes his face off. Crazy scene. Her fight was really cool. Like, in general, like, just the ending scene where she uses everybody's powers. I thought for sure they were actually gonna kill Allison off. Because I was like, it was taking a long time. I was like, I don't know if she's gonna break out of this or not. But fortunately, she did. So that was definitely cool. But the new timeline, I mean, that's just crazy. I just don't know what to think. Ben is still alive in this new timeline. He has like the little scar and stuff. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see what these new characters can do. We have like the weird green cube. Yeah, this is a really random nerd reference, but it made me think of like that super old thing Peter Molyneux did. Maybe like 5 people will get that reference if you end up watching this, but it made me think of that. But yeah, it looks cool. So I'm excited to see where they go with this. But Hargreaves is alive. I would assume that means Pogo is alive as well, because the Vanya apocalypse didn't end up happening, so they should both be fine. Maybe we'll see their mother come back, because the whole thing with that was Diego being like, hey, you can't really trust him, and then she finds out about some of the stuff going on. It seemed like that relationship did kind of falter, so she might actually, as an actual human being still exist. She'd be the actual older version, considering that was a robot in season 1, and this was like her in the 60s, so if she shows up, it would be an older version of her. So if she showed up and it was still her as the robot, it would be interesting to find out how she died, because I don't think they explained that either. I think it was just, this was just their mom, and that was just how it was from day one. And it was just based on this woman who must have died in the past, because even in season 1, we don't ever see the actual woman. So I'm not 100% sure what happened with that storyline either. So that might be something we end up seeing at least an alternate version of. I guess we wouldn't get the real version, but we'll get whatever this new timeline version of her life is, or whatever, however things end up playing out. But all in all, that was a really cool season. I like the action in it. Unfortunately, they did lose the one guy, the dentist. That kind of sucked for him. So I was like, oh, that was like their one big casualty. Harlan's dad gets killed. I don't know if that's going to make him evil. His dad was like kind of the douchebag guy, but it ultimately was like, he was okay at first. He was just like kind of the crappy, 60s husband. And then it was like, oh, the woman coming in to steal my woman, and then sending their son off to whatever, it wasn't going to be good. It was the 60s. Wherever he was about to send his son was not about to be a good spot at all. It's probably not, those places probably aren't the best even today. But in the 60s, for sure, wherever his son was about to go was going to be horrible. So his mom made the right call on that. Hindsight's 2020, but like, she was making the right call for sure on that one. So unfortunately, he gets killed off. So I don't know how that's going to impact their characters. I mean, they probably just end up taking off, and whatever happens with him will just be him growing up with superpowers, and whether or not he decides to tell his mom, and whether or not he decides to be a hero or not. So we'll just have to wait and see about all that stuff. But I enjoyed season 2. I can't wait for season 3. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait who knows how long with Ye Olde Virus going on. But definitely good season 2. I definitely loved it more than season 1. I like how the characters developed. 5 versus 5 was definitely a hilarious fight. So that was really interesting. And that may or may not have made the brand new timeline. Like, that almost makes 3 timelines, because that was still them from season 1 as the Umbrella Academy, but now that version of 5 had a buttload of knowledge, because he talks about the eye and was like, oh, that's just a red herring, like, that's not even important or anything like that. So I don't know if that's even going to come into play in season 3, because they basically made like 3 different timelines by the time they get to the end of the thing, because it's like, well, we got the Sparrow Academy, but we still had the original timeline where old 5 went back in time, and he was still old 5, unless young 5 was lying to him. But the way they did it, it seemed like he was telling them the truth about how they had the calculations wrong. So I would assume he actually went back in time as his old self, he already knew about some of the stuff from the apocalypse. He knew about everything because I think he flat out knew, like, oh no, it was Vanya. It was all crazy. It was Vanya. She did that. So very interesting. Who knows what's gonna happen with them? Maybe they'll go back in time again to try to, like, course correct the timeline and get back to normal. Maybe they won't get erased from time because at this point they technically should be almost 2 times over with sending old Five back and then going to the future, and now it's like the Umbrella Academy didn't even exist. It's the Sparrow Academy. So they should be like twice removed from all existence. So who the F knows what season 3 is going to end up being, but I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be weird no matter what, but I'm sure it'll be fun. So we'd love to know your thoughts on season 2 of the Umbrella Academy. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. What do you guys want to see? If you haven't read the comic, I would love to know what you guys want to see. If you have read the comic, how do you think the show's kind of taken it? I know they've taken like some, even season 1, I know they took like wild liberties with pretty much the storyline itself. So I would like to know, for comic book readers, how you guys feel the show is kind of honoring the original story and things like that. But all in all, just want to know what you guys thought. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.